So before we dive into class, right, I wanted to quickly mention this, and I say it all the time, even though I don't think people believe me. BA is not complicated. If it is sounding complicated to you, I almost feel like I need to say it again just to help you see that it actually isn't complicated. The way that I look at BA is more like how you carry yourself in the work environment, right? The way you communicate, and by that I mean the way you talk and the way you write. Those are two main things that BAs do on a day to day. They'll be part of your technical team that may not do a lot of talking. They may talk to one another, right? Like if you have developers, right? But they may not be doing a lot of talking with the business. Usually, you, the BA, you're the face of the technical team to the business, right? So even though you may not and you really shouldn't be doing any development and and all of that, right? You have an understanding because you've been taking Salesforce classes and all of that, of, the lay of the land, basically. You're still not a developer, right? But what you're going to be valued for the most, in my opinion anyway, is how you're able to communicate. And who exactly are you communicating to? There are two main parties on the job, right? There is your technical team that you're part of, right? The developers, the testers, the admins, your project manager or product owner, if you have one, um, technical team facing product owner, right? Sometimes they're really business facing a lot of the times, but I'm not going to go into the details of that. The point being, there is your technical team that you're going to be engaging with day to day. If you're using the Scrum framework, you're going to be having daily meetings and having conversations, right? They are doing the work, right? But they are doing a lot of communication with you. You know how far they've come with the work, what they're going to be working on next. You have an idea of all of that. That is one part. But there's the other part, which is the business, right? The people you're building the solution for. Okay. You, as the BA, are going to be doing, in my opinion, most of the communication from the team to the business will flow through the BA. And that's why, if you recall what I said a few minutes ago, is that one of the things you'll be most valued for is your ability to communicate in a way that people want to listen to you. So even though we're going to go into software development lifecycle and requirement elicitation, and we're even going to say a few terminologies that you're like, what exactly is Abiola saying? One thing I want you to always remember is that all of this knowledge, very important, no doubt about it, but it is your ability to be able to communicate all of this that would really matter. So it doesn't matter if you can write the best business case in the world, right? Your numbers are on point. You've been able to show the business why they should do this investment, right? But when you're talking to them or the way you've written it, if it doesn't interest them, it's not going to look good on you as a BA. Okay. Again, so I say all of this just to say that as we go through the 10 lessons we have in here, I know it looks like a lot. It's not that bad. Trust me when we get into it. As we go through all of it, one thing I need you to keep reminding yourself is I am learning all of this, right? But it's equally as important, if not important, that I work on my ability to present it. So understand it, understand the software development life cycle, understand what a business case is and how to write one. And we're going to go into the details of all of that. But begin to practice talking. If you haven't done all of that so far in whatever you've done in the training, right? Start talking to other intending BAs in the group, right? When you're having a conversation about businesses, just get in the habit. Of course, if you're not already in the habit of doing that, is what I mean. Okay? All right. So when we look at what we have on the screen, right, we have lessons 1 to 10. The starting point for us is that we want to talk at a high level, what is business analysis? I know you may already have an idea of, what this is, right? But I would still like to just take it as a revision from me if you already know. And if you don't know, this is an opportunity for you to learn that. And then we have lessons 2 to 10, which will take it one day at a time. We're not going to rush through it. But again, like I said, if you ever feel like this is going too fast, Abiola is too fast paced, I'm open to feedback. It's the only way I get better at what I do. I am not going to take it personally, I promise you. So please let me know. I'm here for you in this 4-week period, to help you learn. And, I'm hoping that I'm able to do that the best that I can. Okay. So in lesson 1, we're going to talk about what is business analysis. We're going to talk about who's a BA, and then we're going to look at IT concepts, right? And the type of documentation you can expect to see or work with when you're on a project. One of the reasons why we need to talk about IT concept is that in lessons 2 to 10, we're going to be using the concept as part of the class, right? And so we need to have an idea of what the concept has so that when I mention them, you're not like, oh, what is she talking about? Having said that, even though we're going to look at IT concepts, if you still get to lesson 3 and you're like, oh, what is she talking about? Please just let me know, and I'm more than happy to re-explain it. Okay, so now we're getting into class. Let's see how we're doing for time. Okay, we're getting into class now. So based on what we have on the screen, right? The first point is basically telling us that business analysis is the practice of facilitating change, basically. Typically, when a company hires a BA, it is because they're trying to move from point A to point B, okay? And they need somebody to come in to look at how they do things at point A, possibly document it and analyze it as we prepare for the change that will get us to point B. Okay, to do that, we need to identify what the needs are. We need to identify what the possible solutions are. So I like to give a lot of everyday examples when I teach to help it stick, right? Imagine that you were going from Houston to Austin, right? In Texas, you were going from Houston to Austin, right? So you know that you need to move from point A, which is Houston, you need to get to point B. Okay, it's not a walking distance. And even if it was a walking distance, you have to walk, right? But in reality, it's not even a walking distance. So you're going to think about, oh, what are the things that I need to get me from point A to point B, right? Point B is where I need to be. I'm in point A right now. Okay, my need is that I need to be in point B for whatever reason is. I need to go sign a contract. I need to go buy a house there. I need to, whatever it is you need to do, right? And now we need to recommend solutions from getting from point A to point B. We could fly, we could drive, we could ride a power bike. Maybe if you're very ambitious, you could ride a regular bike. Okay? Typically, there's more than one way to get from point A to point B, and that's what we're talking about here. Again, we're still high level here. We're going to get into the details of it later. Let's bring it back to an IT project environment, right? So this could be a software implementation. Maybe our goal is to increase our customer base by 20% in the next year, right? We know that the current application cannot do that because it doesn't have proper tracking. Our clients don't even like the application. We've lost customers because the application is so clunky, right? So we know there is a need to implement a new application, okay? A new CRM. Well, what are the best CRMs for the industry that we're in? Salesforce is one of them, but they have competition as well. Okay. And so that goes back to the thinking about potential solutions, right? I had a meeting today, just maybe about an hour or two before this class, right? And we just sent out what we call an RFUI. Don't worry yet about what RFUI is, but we're basically asking vendors to say, this is our requirement. Come and tell us how fantastic your tool is and how we can help us meet that need. Okay, so basically we're looking at those solutions for us to be able to, so we're asking them for a demo so that we can make an informed decision on who we're going to go with. Okay, so again, bringing it back to software implementation, right? Based on the need of your company, the solution might be we're upgrading our current software, or we're changing it completely, or maybe we just need to change a process, right? Solutions don't always mean we're implementing Salesforce. They can actually hire you for, now they've done this implementation, right? But they need to change their processes as well. Chances are you're going to get hired for a software implementation 9 out of 10 times. But I just needed you to know that there are other types of changes. It is not always software. Sometimes they would hire you for a software implementation. Once that is done, they keep you on. If, let's say, you're a consultant like me, right? Because as a consultant, you have an end date with the company. But if you're an employee, you're with the company. You know, you don't have, maybe your end date is in 2090, something like that, right? And so now they've done this software implementation, they can keep you on for, you know, some type of process change, organizational change, or any other type of change. Okay. Business analysis can be used to understand the current state and to define the future state. So I talked a bit about that already. Before you say I'm going to point B, you must know where you are. It's almost like when you use your Google Maps, right? And you're trying to ask it to take you to Safeway in the next city, right? It's going to ask you where you are. For me to be able to plot your route to point B, I need to know your point A. And so that is your current state. What is the current state of affairs now, right? The reason we're looking for a change is because we're unhappy about there's something about the current state we don't like. So we need to fully understand it. We're not going to jump into conclusions, right? This may have stemmed from the manager of marketing has complained about one, two, three, and the manager of sales has complained about two, three, four. They don't typically hire a BA just because the manager of marketing complained. Usually they will then hire a BA and say, oh, maybe there's actually a bigger problem, right? And the BA will do a proper current state analysis, which is where you begin to talk to all the departments or teams concerned to understand what do you do today? How do you do it today? What is it about today that you do not like? Okay, how does the current system work for you? How is it not working for you? Are there any manual processes we do today because the current system isn't working properly for you? Have you run into any issues because the current system isn't robust enough? Those are some of the questions you're going to think you're going to be asking when you're doing current state. Now, let me pause here for a second and mention this. I've had people tell me, oh, I'm just a bit anxious about working as a BA. Like on day one, what do I say? I have no idea. I don't know what they do. I don't know how they do it. I've never really worked as a BA. And they're going to see through me and know that I don't know, right? That's a valid concern, in my opinion. However, I remind people you are an analyst, you are not a solutionist. You're going to analyze what they give you. So you're not starting from zero. Even though you get to that job and on day one, you truly don't know their business, it is okay. You're not required to know, but you're required to ask the right questions so that you can know. And that's why I just gave you, I think it was about 10 different questions I just told you now that you could ask when you're meeting with that department for the first time as you're working towards documenting the current state. Again, we'll go into more detail about current state later, and then we get to defining future state. Now we have an understanding of what we do today, right? This is this is our end-to-end for acquiring a new customer today. Okay, you have an understanding. And as part of that understanding, you've come to understand what is not working well for them in this current state. Therefore, when we move to the future state, you can expect that they don't want to carry those pain points forward, right? What do we mean by pain point? Just like it says, what is painful about today that they don't like? What is motivating them from wanting to move from point A to point B? Okay? Those things they don't like, you want to deliberately exclude it from the future. It's almost like saying that you're driving from Houston to Austin, like I said earlier, and then you get to Austin only to discover you're still in Houston. Do you know how pissed off you'd be? Nobody wants to be in that position, right? And so that's why we define the future state. Before we do that implementation of Salesforce or whatever the application is, right? We want to map it out. We want to draw it out. We want to write it out. Let it be clear to everybody. This is what the future would look like. Do we all have an agreement? This is what the future would look like. And so that's why I said, as a BA, you are not generating anything. You are asking the right questions so you can get all of that information. And then when you get the information, you will document it properly and then you present it to the people who gave you the information and let them say, that is what we told you, that is what we want. Okay, and this is how we determine the activities that will be required to get us from point A to point B. So let's go back to our Houston to Austin example. Now we've decided that we want to fly. If we want to fly, what are the activities that need to happen? We need to buy our tickets. We need to check in. Once check-in opens, we need to drive to the airport if we don't live close to the airport. Okay, when we get to the airport, if we drove to the airport, we need to park our car in the airport. But if we took an Uber, then we need to pay the Uber driver. Then we need to go through security, right? And we need to board the plane. And then And then did I say we're flying? Yeah, if we're flying, and then when we get to Austin, just imagine all the other steps that would happen based on, your experience when you've traveled. However, if we were driving, it'd be different, right? If we don't own a car, we need to rent a car and we need to put gas into it, right? And then we'll drive. But if we own a car, we put gas into our own car, right? So again, this is okay. The steps for each option will differ, basically, is what we're saying here. But once we know the current state and we know the future state, we can then figure out what needs to happen to get us from point A to point B. There is a huge gap between point A and point B. There's certain activities we need to carry out. We need to buy Salesforce. We need to buy licenses of it. This could be anything, whatever it is your company needs, right? We work to document all of that. Let me pause here for a second. Do we have any questions on this first slide? I'm just going to take a quick look at. Oh, okay. That's not for me. Does anybody have any question about anything I've talked about? No, it's very clear. Okay. Let's go to the next slide here. Okay. Okay, so let's just talk about some of the things that a BA will do, right? So when you become a BA on that job, because you will get the BA job, okay? So once you get that BA job, you're going to be examining the client or the customer or that department. Remember when I talked about the marketing manager, and all, right? You're going to be examining them. You're going to be talking to them. You're going to be understanding, again, like I mentioned earlier, what they do today, what they want the future to look like, right? Having those conversations with them and documenting it. You're an intermediary between the business and the technical team. So your developers will be doing the building, right? But they typically don't talk to the business. The developers talk to the business through you. You are the one who will go get an understanding of what the business wants, right? And then you communicate it to the technical team. Okay. A BA would try their best to understand what is not liked about the current state. We talked about that earlier. So you'd gather, you'd analyze, and you communicate requirements. So let's pause for a second. Analyze. What am I analyzing? I mean, they told me what they don't like. It's pretty clear. What exactly am I analyzing? The reason you need to analyze it is that sometimes people tell you things the way that they can phrase it in their mind. It may not reflect the picture 100%, and it may not even be true. It may just be their reality at a point in time. What do I mean by that? Oh, when I open this report, it takes forever to load, right? Or I'm trying to think of another example. Or, when I open this customer's profile, I don't see some of the really important information that I'd like to see. Okay, so the question is, when they tell you things like that, obviously it's a pain point to them. That's why they're telling it to you. But remember, I said it may not necessarily paint the full picture. So what do you want to do when they tell you these things? Is that you want to ask follow-up questions. Okay, like, okay, an example would be, when I open this report, I typically open it when I start my day at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., whatever it is, right? And then about 1 hour into work, I usually need some information from this report. So I open up the report and it just takes forever to load. Okay, it takes forever to load. As a BA, you think about that for a bit. And then speaking as a BA, myself, if somebody was to tell me that, one of the first things I'll ask you, so when you open that report around 9 a.m., give or take, right? You're 1 hour into your workday. Do you have other reports open at that time? Okay. And they're like, well, yes, in the first 1 hour, I have this other really large 5 reports that I open up and this and that and that. So I already have an idea, okay, maybe they have too much going on their screen. One of the things I'm going to do next is to ask somebody else about that report and say, okay, if you don't have any tab open, or I may even ask the person that I'm talking to, if you close all of these other tabs, and try to open the report. Does it still take forever to load? And they'll be like, you know what? Now that you talk about it, I've never really tried that. Why don't we try it out? And they tried it, and you see, that was actually not a real pain point. Okay? I said all of that to say that don't take whatever people tell you at face value, not because they're lying, but because the reality is not necessarily a reflection of full reality. Okay? Or sometimes they tell you things that is just part of the information you need to continue your work. So when they tell you things, there are 5 ways of asking follow-up questions, Oh, at 9 a.m. I do this. Why do you do it at 9 a.m.? Is there any other person who does the same task as you? So they call them the who, why, when, what questions. As a BA, if you get into the practice of starting your questions with who, why, when, and again, we're going to get into details of that later, you continue to uncover a lot, and that is what you want to uncover. Think about it this way. If let's say they've hired you and now you're going to be meeting with the marketing department, right? You meet with the manager and you meet with 2 people in the department, and then you just document everything they tell you at face value. You'll be done in 1 week, so they might as well fire you. Maybe not fire you, but terminate you, right? Because why would they continue paying you when your work is done? But usually, even as a consultant, they'd hire you for 1 year or 6 months, right? Because usually that's how much time you need. They've gauged it. They know how long it should take you to do the work, right? And so one of the things they've thought about is that they don't expect you to come in and just take everything at face value and document it and say, oh, here is your current state, it's all done and wrapped up. You're going to ask those questions that would continue to help you uncover until you get to, there's actually a very good example in this slide, and I think we'll get to it. So I'll leave that point for now. Okay, so we said that BA will seek to understand pain points in the current state. Pain points is what they're not happy about, what isn't working for them, what is making their work inefficient or ineffective today. Okay, and the BA will gather, analyze, and communicate requirements. For now, pending when we get into the details of requirement gathering, just think about requirement as this. You go into a restaurant and they say, what would you like to eat today? And you tell them, oh, I'd like a well-done steak and whatever type of vegetable you like, right? That well-done steak and that vegetable is your requirement. That is why you came to that restaurant. No matter how fantastic their sweet potato fries is, that's not why you're there. That is not your requirement. What you require is the well-done steak and the vegetables. So when you're talking to the marketing manager or the sales manager or whoever it is that is that stakeholder that you're talking to, you're seeking to understand what the future, what their need is, what would they like to see in the future. Now, do not confuse that with what would they like to, how the solution should behave. When you get into these meetings and you're talking to them, do not talk about the behavior of the solution. That is not the point of the meeting. The point of the meeting is to understand what they need to be able to do in the future. How it will be done, leave it to the technical team. Okay, that's a conversation you can have with the technical team, not the business. With the business, you want to talk about what should be done. With the technical team, you communicate what should be done to the technical team, and the technical team will discuss the best way to do it, how it should be done. Okay? The BA documents discoveries surrounding the needs of users in the form of requirements. So we already talked about that. Okay? So what does, solid BA look like? They're bold, and if they're not bold, they fake it till they make it. You don't want to come across as not confident. Yes, you're going to walk into that first meeting and your heart might be beating, and that is okay. We've all been there. In fact, as senior BA, sometimes you're still there. If you normally would not meet with the VP, and today they say come and meet with the VP. For a second, you may just feel uncomfortable, unsure of yourself. It is okay. Just don't show it that you're not confident, okay? Or you're not bold. So a BA is bold, they're inquisitive, right? They want to know the why. And they're not afraid to ask questions. So how is this done? When is it done? Who does it? What exactly is done? Why do you do it? Okay? Let's go back to the example of a report. They're running that report at 9 a.m. and it's slowing everything down because the report is pulling a lot of data. Why can't that report be scheduled to run overnight and delivered into some folder where they can just open it up? Why are you running it at 9 a.m.? Is there anything that happens between, if we were to schedule it to run at 3 a.m., is there anything that happens between 3 a.m. and 9 a.m. that may not want you to have it as a scheduled report that is outputted at 3 a.m.? Okay? A BA knows that what is said may be different from what is intended, because you also have to think about people's communication styles, right? Everybody communicates in different ways, and that's why you want to ask why and who, when, and all of that, just to make sure what they're saying is what you're understanding. A good PA has good verbal and non-verbal skills and good conflict management skills. The conflict management is important because you will meet people who don't like you. You meet people who don't like one another, and you're all in a meeting together. And rather than them working with you for you to get the requirements, they're indirectly fighting one another. You need to figure out how to manage that. After 3 months on the job, you can't go and tell your project manager, oh, I haven't gone so far because you're always fighting in the meeting. They're going to be looking at you like, what are you talking about? During the interview, you said you had great conflict management skills. So why could you not manage the conflict for you to get the information that you needed? Okay. A BA is comfortable using multiple communication tools, right? So Microsoft Office, Teams, Zoom, other collaboration tools and knowledge management tools. So again, you find out what's in use when you get to that company, but it's always good to go in with some knowledge. Sometimes you go in there and the tool they're using, you haven't used it before, but you've used a similar tool, right? And so you can transfer the skills from the tool you know to the new tool and you'll be able to ramp up faster. Okay, so talked about earlier that there are different types of projects, right? Not all projects are IT projects, but an IT project typically may deal with IT infrastructure, information systems, computers, right? Feel like most of you will end up working on IT projects. And most of my career, most, if not all of my career, it's really been IT implementations, right? And I know that when you go on Indeed, 9 out of 10 jobs is all IT implementation. So you can expect that that may be your experience as well. But like I mentioned earlier, there's some projects that are not IT, just something for you to know. So now let's focus on IT projects, right? Because again, chances are that is what you're going to be working on. There are three main paths that companies take when it comes to IT project. One is they could buy a COTS application, which is a commercial off the shelf, right? They buy it and then they customize it to meet their own needs, right? So they're not building it from scratch. The second option is that they would create their own detailed requirements document, which you as the BA will champion, and then they will contract an IT company to build the product in-house. I worked at a company a while back where what they do is so unique. Number one, they're the only ones who do it in Canada, and there's no application on the market. So they had to build it in-house, basically. Hired an entire team, developers, QA, BAs, this and that, right? Just to build it. And it wasn't that what we were building was that fantastic. It was just that it was unique, basically. So there was no cost commercial off-the-shelf application that we could buy. The third one is create the product in-house, right? So actually, this third one was what we did. So they hired a team of contractors and we were building the application. We didn't give it to an IT company to go build for us. Okay. Sometimes companies do a mix of both, depending on what their need is. And so in case you're wondering, okay, as a BA, what am I supposed to do with this information Abiola just gave me? It's just for you to know. There is nothing you as a person will do with this slide that I'm showing right now. But when you get on that job and they say, oh, we're thinking of getting a COTS application, you're not looking at them like, COTS, what is that? Right? Now you have an idea. Okay. Any questions so far? Even if there is no question, I'll just like to hear from someone just to know that everybody's still here. Anybody? Okay, I'll call a name. I'll put someone on the spot. Oh, I have two hands raised. Fantastic. Sorry if you've raised your hand for a while. I wasn't looking at that. Demilade, go ahead, please.
Uh, Hi, Abiola.
Hi,
Good afternoon,
Demilade.
everyone. Fine, thank you. Thank you for this introduction so far. Allow me to apologize real quick. You might hear a baby's noise in the background. I'm currently babysitting as I'm attending this class.
That's okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I was like, as you asked, my feedback basically is just to do a knowledge check, like just to be sure I'm following as you've started the class. From your summary of who a BA is and the qualities a BA should what you call manifest. I think a BA is more like a go-between, a liaison between a company and its a technology team, or maybe I say they are their IT team, basically. So you're saying a BA acts as an interpreter for the business, and at the same time, say a fact finder from the IT team. So I go to the IT team, I speak their language, I get some details, I get facts, I get them, put it artifact, and I get back to the business itself, and I communicate the language the IT has communicated with me in the language they understand. So basically, I'm saying I'm double faceted, or I'm looking at two different regions. I speak with the business, I speak with the IT team. So we're saying a BA is the go between these two ends.
Absolutely. I think you definitely understand what we're talking about here. Even though I would flip it the other way around. Usually,
Okay.
you have a lot of information flowing from the business to the technical team. The technical team is building it, right? But you know,
Yeah.
they seek feedback too, right? And so we need to show what we've built to the business. If it's not too technical, it may be the BA that would actually do the showing. But if it's somewhat technical, right, and they still need they can't just make it 100% not technical, right? They may bring the developer to be a part of that conversation to be able to answer some questions. You know what I mean? But if I were to measure the flow of information, I'll say a lot of it, because remember, you're getting the requirement from the business and you're giving it to the technical team.
True.
You understand the logic. The way that you've
Okay.
described it is the way that it is.
All right. Thank you very much, Amila.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem at all. Vivian?
Hi, thank you so much for the class so far. So my question is basically, so you did mention something about the BA is not really like into the solutioning because you're going to leave that for the technical team. But however, since the BA will kind of elicit, analyze, validate, and document requirements,
Mm-hmm.
and also I was thinking that the BA as well will kind of focus on the solution if you're going to be able to kind of analyze those requirements. So
Yeah.
I'm just kind of a little bit of trying to understand how the BA is able to kind of focus on the solution, or maybe prefer that requirement in terms of the solution if they're not really focused on the solution in there.
That's a very good question. So, when I said what I said it in the context of when you're talking to the business. Okay. When you're talking to the business, your priority is to gather requirement from them, right? You're not talking to them about how you're going to configure the system. Because if I don't know what you need, right? If I don't know that steak and vegetables is what you need, we cannot even get to whether it's going to be a well done steak or half done or whatever it's called, right? So what I meant is that when you're talking to the business and they're telling you, oh, this is what we do today and this is how we do it. These are the pain points, right? Like 1, 2, 3 are the things we don't like about the current state and what would like to see in the future. And so look at the example that I gave you about the report, right? It may even be the business will say, oh, when we run the report today, it's so slow. And we have an idea why, because it's pulling a lot of data but, in the future, obviously, we don't want a report that is this slow because we're waiting for that report for 1 hour, right? Do you understand what I mean? If at that point, you as a BA go into solutioning. What if you say all of that because you know it, but then you get to the technical team and they say, no, that's not how we're going to do it. There's actually a better way. Then you have to go back to the business and say, oh, scratch what I told you. That's not what we're going to do. So what you
okay.
want to
I think
do,
really I understand the point. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
so do you understand it now? It's not that you're
Yes, I'm understanding
concerned
your
about the
point.
solution. You are, but this is not the place and time for you to start. They call it solutioning. This is not the place and time for you to be solutioning. At that requirement gathering meeting, what your priority is to understand the need, the pain. Okay, what do we do today? What do we want to do in the future? Okay, I'm glad you know that you're clear on that now. Bola?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, Abiola. Good evening, and thanks for a wonderful class. You mentioned something at the beginning. I know you're still going to talk about that in later classes, but based on circumstances right now, I just want to clarify from you. You did mention RFUI. I know about RFI, I know about RFQ and RFP, and I don't want to be put on the spot based on what I'm doing at the moment. So I decided to just ask you, it's better to ask you than to be asked during an interview and I'm just looking. I don't even understand. But
yeah. Okay, so you want me to talk about RFUI?
If it's just the meaning, I don't mind, please.
Yeah, okay,
Thank
can,
you.
and I will spend just a minute on it. So what does RFUI stand for? Request for expression of interest. This RFUI, my current engagement is the first time that I heard it. Even I had never heard of RFUI. And trust me, I've heard about so many different types of RF. What is RFUI? So request for expression of interest, right? We have this need that we need to find a solution to. Basically, we're not at the proposal stage. Don't even send us proposal yet. Just even give us information on how you can meet this need. So expression of interest, right? Express your interest to get to that next level, which is proposal.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That is basically what it is. Not a lot of companies use it. And I think I've worked in at least 2 or 3 health authorities, really large. Now is the first time I've seen it. So anyway, in a nutshell, that is what RFUI is. Request for expression of interest. And it happens before we get to the proposal stage.
All right, thank you.
RFEOI, yes. Okay, let's see what do we have in the. No, I'm not. So it is RFEOI. Oh, Uche, did I send that directly to you? Let me send it to everybody. RFEOI. Yeah. RFEOI. Okay. Just trying to see if there's any. Okay. Awesome. Do we have any other questions before we go on? And thank you to everyone who's asked the question. If you don't have a question yet, that's okay. Hopefully,
Biola, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. What part of the world are you in, please? Good morning.
I'm in Nigeria.
Oh, Nigeria. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Okay. So listening to you, and we could say that a business analyst interprets communication between IT and business stakeholders. So my question from what you've said so far, so how best can a BA elicit and document requirements? And then how best can a BA develop and define project roadmaps? Then lastly, I hear about user stories a lot. So how best can a BA write user stories?
Okay.
I'm new to a lot of these things, so I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So yeah, thank you.
So what I would recommend is, I think we have an entire topic, like an entire lesson on what you just asked. If you're okay with it, I'll say we hold until then and not jump ahead. Remember that today's lesson is high level, like requirement gathering. We are going to talk about it. You don't have a choice to understand it. Like, we'll spend a lot of time on it. So I'll just implore you to please just hold on. Very valid question, but we'll get to it. I don't want to, jump ahead. Okay, that's good. Awesome. So let's continue here in the time that we have. So examples of IT projects could be an application development. It could be a software upgrade. We're upgrading from one version to another. It could be a migration. We're going from on-site to cloud, infrastructure implementation, right? We're changing things like in our network and computers, you know, or others. It could be many different things. You don't need to know every single type. Even I wouldn't say I've experienced every type of IT project there is out there. Just that from contract 1 to contract 2, I leverage my experience, right? And if I get to a place and they're like, oh, we're doing a software upgrade, then I go with the flow and look for ways to add value. Requirement gathering is still requirement gathering, regardless of the type of application. And so that's why it's key, or it's important, you know, for you to understand the role of a BA, so that it doesn't matter where they place you, you know how to carry yourself, you have an understanding what is required of you, and you're able to get the job done. Okay, again, this slide it's not anything anybody needs to memorize. It's just to let you know there are different types of IT projects out there. Okay, so why do we even do projects? Companies do projects where they're spending $1 million. I mean, they hire like a contractor BA and they keep that BA on for 2 years. That is easily 400K, depending on what that contractor is earning, right? Easily 400K, and there's still developers and there's QA and there's this and that, right? So some projects are really big and they spend a lot of money. Okay, why do companies do it? Okay, one is market demand. Okay, another one is strategic opportunity. They want to take advantage of an opportunity, right? Maybe there's a market that they want to get into, the current tool cannot accommodate it, they implement Salesforce, right? For them to be able to compete in this new market, they need a solid application like Salesforce. It may be because there's a business need. The current application just isn't working and is a headache for both customers and employees. They can implement a project to improve their current processes. It may be an environmental consideration, a new technology, legal requirements. It may be that the current application is being phased out. There's not going to be support again. Microsoft is not going to support it anymore. Better to be safe than sorry. They're initiating a new project to replace that application. So again, multiple reasons, right? But not every project succeeds. And why does that happen? Why do some projects fail? This is not an exhaustive list, but it gives you an idea. One is scope creep. Scope creep is when we begin to build more than has been agreed to, or when the business is beginning to ask for more than was agreed to. Remember that on a project, we don't have infinite money and infinite time. They've hired you as a BA, maybe your contractor for a year or two, and the developers for a year or two, meaning that we need to wrap it up with a nice bow by the time that time is done, by the time the 2 years is up. But if the business keeps coming back after we've agreed and said these are all of the requirements and this is what we're going to build, and they just keep saying, oh, and we need this little extra and we need that little extra. Think about it like going to a restaurant and now you've ordered your steak and vegetables, and then as you're eating it, you call the waiter and say, oh, and I need ice cream and I need this, but your budget is $50. Well, your $50 cannot accommodate ice cream and any other thing. Eat your steak and vegetables and go home, please. All right? Because we don't want scope creep. Okay? So again, scope creep is when a red flag for scope creep is when you start getting asked for what was not agreed upon prior. Because remember, when we agree upon it, say, okay, within this 1 year time frame, this is what we can build and stabilize. If you start adding things onto it, it initiates a lot of problems, even apart from time. Okay? Another one is poor requirement gathering. And one of the things that will lead to poor requirement gathering is when what they tell you is all you're documenting. You're not asking questions to unravel what they're telling you, to decompose it. Okay? Somebody tells you, oh, I need to fly to Houston tomorrow. And you say, oh, their requirement is they need to fly to Houston tomorrow. Well, as a BA, you should say, why do you want to fly to Houston? And why do you want to go tomorrow? Because the reason why I need to know why you want to go tomorrow is if you're buying the ticket today, it's going to be expensive. So even if you prove to me that you need to go to Houston, can you go 1 month from now to give us enough time to buy that ticket?
Me.
Also, tell me why you want to go.
Mommy is reading. You can see I'm reading my own. You read your own too. Yes, Travis is busy.
If we can all mute, that would be great. I know that mommy and daddy duties can be hard when we're in class, so I totally understand. So going back to what I was saying, right, is and tell me why you need to go to Houston. Because maybe the reason they need to go to Houston can be done with a phone call. But if you just take it at face value that they need to go to Houston, you've basically cost your company maybe $2,000 to $3,000, right? Because that ticket is not going to be cheap for what could have been done via phone call. But how will we know that we could do it via phone call if we don't ask the follow-up questions? Why are you going to Houston? Do you absolutely have to go tomorrow or can you wait till later? Okay, and I know that these are non-IT examples, but I'm saying it just so you understand the concept of what poor requirement gathering can lead to. Another thing that could lead to project failure is lack of resources. Now, what does that mean? When they hire a 5-man project team for a 20-man project, people are going to be burnt out. They're going to start calling out sick, and eventually the project will be delayed anyway. Unrealistic plan and schedule. For a project like this, we know that it should take 1 year, but management has said go and do it in 4 months. Chances are that project is going to fail. These are some of the red flags you should look out for. So in case you're wondering, well, I'm the BA, if they set an unrealistic schedule, that is the headache of the PM. Why do I need to worry about it? The reason that you need to, maybe worry is not the word, but number one, the reason you need to be aware is that even you as a BA, what you should spend, because now they want to do the entire project in 4 months, right? So maybe what you should be spending 4 months on, they will make you do it in 1 month. That will be immense pressure, okay? So anyway, these are some of the reasons why projects fail. There are other reasons, lack of proper management support, okay? Is another reason. Even when it comes to lack of resources, sometimes it is not the project team, it is the business. They're so busy with work that they don't even have time to meet with the BA. It is no fault of the BA. Of course, what should the BA do in that situation? Communicate it to the PM, and it should be escalated to the project sponsor so that the powers that be can talk about it and understand that if the business is not available, they're just wasting money because they'll continue paying the BA and the technical team anyway. And by the time all the project money finishes and they've not even met with the business, right, they're back to square one. The reason why you want to mention it is that you don't want to be that BA that after 1 year, they'll be like, why was he even here? Why was she even here? She did nothing in the 1 year. He did nothing in the 1 year. They're not going to remember that it was a business that wasn't available. Why are they not going to remember? Because you did not say it. You did not put it in writing. Okay? Moving on here. Okay, so this is what we just looked at. So how do we start a project? What is the initiation process like? Okay, so one of the ways in which you start a project is the RFP. So someone asked a question about RFP earlier. She knows about RFP, but she hadn't heard about RFUI before. RFP is a request for proposal. This is where a company sends this request to companies that have the potential of delivering the solution, maybe based on industry reputation, like Deloitte. People bring in Deloitte to come and help with the implementation. They don't even bother with getting a team in-house to implement it, or they may create a small team in-house but have Deloitte do most of the work. Okay, so this RFP, one of the ways in which you get Deloitte, because most companies won't just do like a direct award to Deloitte, especially if this is like a government agency, right? There's a lot of transparency required. So they do an RFP and throw it out there, and companies can respond. And then they'll say, okay, of all these companies that respond, we're asking these companies to come in and tell us how they can help meet this need. So again, it's a formal invitation extended by an organization that needs certain goods or services, right? The client, which is your company, may do a conference to answer questions that vendors have. The reason they do that is that sometimes vendors, in their bid to prepare a response to that request, they may have questions, right? So the company may do a call to answer those questions, okay? And then the companies would put their proposals together and send it to your company. And then your company would evaluate those responses just to see, the technical capabilities of each of the vendor. Okay, can these vendors really help meet the need that we have? Okay, and then of all those who submitted these proposals, now that your company has looked at all the responses, they will shortlist, or they may most likely will shortlist some providers who have, based on their response, look like stars, right? And then the next step may or may not be, I've been in a company that has done this, is to do a proof of concept where they say, okay, your response to the RFP is a document. Now, come show us in practical terms how you can help us meet the needs. So that's what we call a proof of concept. It's a very small scale of that big project. Okay? I once worked in a company, I've given this example in previous classes, where we needed to implement robotics, right? And so we went through the RFP stage, and then we were down to, I think, 3 or 4 companies, the likes of Deloitte and all of that, IBM, and we told them to come do a proof of concept. So even though the project we're doing was an integration of like 4 different applications, we mimicked it on a small scale and put everything on one computer and said, show us what your tool can do. And it was excellent because I, as the BA, because I supported the process all through. And in case you're wondering, okay, what does this have to do with me as a BA? You are not championing all of this, but you will support it. You work closely with your project manager to make it happen. So anyway, as the BA, I was the one tasked with collating all of the results to see how well they did. And the winner in quotes was so obvious, the company that did the best, because their tool showed clearly how we could meet the need. So we're not basing this on what they told us. We were basing the decision on who to give the contract to on what they showed. Okay? And then a single provider is selected, a statement of work is issued to that provider or the vendor that you select. The statement of work is basically a detailed description of the work that needs to be done, the cost, the timelines, and other contract information. So this is how a lot of projects are implemented. They may hire you at a stage where they've already done all of this, and all you just see is the documentation that went into it. Or they may hire you before this begins so that you can support the PM, the project manager, in getting it done. Okay? We have about 15 minutes left, and we'll go into we have about 15 minutes left. I'll still like to be able to take a few questions, but I think that we still have time for a few slides. So I'll just quickly check. Do we have any raised hands? Does anybody have any questions? I see there's one raised hand. Whose hand is that? Oh, Roland,
Yes,
do you have a question?
yes, it's Roland. Thanks, Abiola. So I
Yeah.
just, my question is on one of the previous slides, the one titled Why Projects Fail.
Okay.
What would be your advice to a next new BA who has no prior project estimation experience on how he or she can better manage the estimation to ensure he's not, or he or she is not misleading himself or herself to failure?
From a project failure standpoint?
Yes. So if you circle back to the slide.
Yeah, let me do that. Okay. Here.
Yeah, so you had the unrealistic plan and schedule, right? So
yeah,
my question is, what's your advice for a new BA who hasn't had a prior project or software, for example, implementation experience, and here he or she is faced with coming up with a project plan or with an estimate for when a particular initiative will be completed? How will he or she tell that this initiative should take us 10 months and not 6 months, as may be suggested by the business owners?
Okay, good question. So to start with, The BA should not be the one planning the project, right? It should be the PM from a timeline standpoint. Whereas a BA, you want to, really focus on to see what's going on there is obviously, I mean, the overall timeline you want to know, right? Because you don't want to be a part of a failed project. But the one that is most important to you is how much time have they given you as the BA to gather requirements or to finalize the requirement? Because you're a BA, a new BA, you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. If you've never flown from A to B, there's no way you're going to know how long it will take to fly. You'd have to Google it. My recommendation, if you're a new BA and you don't know these things, is ask a more seasoned BA. At a high level, tell them what the project is about and say, realistically, based on this project information that I shared with you, I don't share confidential information, right? Based on this project information that I've given you, and the fact that I need to work with maybe 10 stakeholders, right? How long would you say this will take? Okay, what they tell you is not going to be 100% as well, because there are many things even they don't know. Number one, what is the availability of the stakeholders you're going to be engaging? You and I can work on the same project, exact same project, right? But because my stakeholders, they've carved out time to meet with me, you may need double the time because you're chasing people down, right? So there's so many things that you don't know and you can't control. But at least at a high level, if you ask somebody who's done this before to say, oh, this is what the project is about, we're implementing Salesforce, we're rolling it out to 3 departments, this is how big the departments are, right? And at a high level, these are some of the business requirements, right? How long would you say that will take? That will then give you an idea that you can work with. You can then compare that to whatever because if you look at the project plan, it will say in the project plan how long has been allocated for requirement gathering, right? If it's too far off, maybe the person you talk to tells you it will take you 5 months and then you see they've said 2, right? You may want to check with one more person just to be sure that what this person told you actually has some weight. But the point here being, don't overprocess anything. Don't spend 1 month trying to figure out timeline. It is not worth it from one BA to another. Because you don't know, you don't have that experience for you to gauge with. If you have a decent enough PM, they should know how long it will take and they will build buffers into it as well, if you know what I mean. But let's say both you and the project manager are new, then you want to ask somebody who knows, who has an idea. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. There was another raised hand. Is this Ayomiko?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much, Abiola. One of the questions I want to ask is, how do you document or record your requirement gathering? Is there like a structured template for BAs to record all those requirement gathering? That's one. And then two, if you're hired by the company indirectly, you are a BA, you are like an analyst, right?
Yeah.
Do you always have like a project manager to report to? Has there ever been situation whereby there is no project manager? In that case, who do you report to? Or that's my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. So let me take the first question, right? You said that is there a format to documenting requirements, right? So let's look at what requirement gathering is like in real life. So you're meeting with maybe 1 or 2 people, right? You're meeting with 1 to 2 people and you're asking questions and they're telling you, trust me, at that point, you're not thinking structure. You're trying your best to document whatever they're telling you. If you have the option to record, you can record it like if it's a Teams meeting, but please never record anybody without telling them you're recording them. Because you'll be amazed at how different what people are. Sometimes, depending on how political that company is, right? What people will tell you when they're not being recorded may be slightly different from what they will tell you when they're being recorded. So please don't record anybody without letting them know. But I digress. My point here is, at that point in that meeting, right, when you're gathering the requirement, all you care about is capturing all they've told you. maybe you're with your computer and you're just typing, right? And then after the meeting is when you clean it up. Usually your company may have a template for how they want requirements to be documented. Most companies have a template. If they don't have a template, they may say, oh, it's okay for you to get your own template. But I've hardly worked in a company that didn't have their own format for what they want their requirement to look like. Again, if they don't have one and they ask you to bring one, just validate it with them before you start documenting. So find one, ask another fellow BA, ask somebody, ask Black Force, right? Get a good looking template and share it with them. If your company wants requirements to be documented in user story, we'll get into details of user story later on. That's how you want to document it. But if they want it in use case format, that's how you want to document it. So again, just to reiterate, with the point here being, at that point of documenting it, personally, I type very fast. I don't like recording because I don't like going back to even listen to the recording. If you can record when you're just starting out, I'll ask you to record. I've been working as a BA for long enough, so somehow, anyway, I just know how to listen and type and make sense of the information. I don't always recommend it to people because even I sometimes I'm like, oh, did they tell me A or did they tell me B? Right? So if you can record, they give you the go ahead to record it, and then ask if they don't tell you how they want their requirements to be documented. The current company, the organization that I'm with, they want the requirements in user story format. Another company may want it in functional requirement. And by that, I mean the system needs to be able to do this. The user needs to be able to do that. Compared to user story where you be like, as a marketing manager, I need to be able to create a lead so that I can, or maybe not the marketing manager, but somebody else, right? Do you understand what I mean? You need to understand how they want it documented. And then you take that, maybe you call it a rough note, whatever notes you came out of that meeting with, and then clean it up. You're going to have the time to do that. Does that answer your question? The first question, at least.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. What was the second question?
I was asking that as a business analyst that is hired directly by the company, do you always have like project managers, or do you sometimes do the job of project manager? And who do you report to in that case?
Yeah. Okay. So who do you report to? The company itself will tell you who to report to. So you're either reporting to a project manager if there's one, or you're reporting to somebody else, but they will tell you who to report to. Might you double as a project manager? I would not say it has never happened before. Ideally, you shouldn't. But sometimes maybe it's a very small project, or the company is trying to save money. It can happen. I've done it before where I was a BA on a big project, but they had this other smaller project that needed to be done, and there was a dependency between my project and this other small project. So dependency means that there is some type of connection. The big project will depend on the outcome of the small project, even though we started the big project first. So at some point in the big project, we needed to go do the small one. Okay? I have PM experience. I just told them I'll take it on. And I took it on. Like, I basically volunteered to do it. Can your company ask you to do it? They can, like, I've heard companies ask for many things, right? But that is not the ideal situation. The ideal situation is that when you're a BA, BA is enough work, and you need a clear head to do it, right? So yeah, it can happen, but I don't think it happens often. And who should you report to? You will know. Because not every BA is hired to work on like a project with, like a Salesforce implementation. Sometimes there is a BA that's hired, or maybe they've had the BA before, but they just have the BA work on, this is post-implementation, right? We're cleaning things up, making sure the application is behaving as it should, finding out if there are any other needs that the project did not meet, right? And the BA may be reporting to a BA manager, something like that. It's not a project like a daily Scrum type project, right? But there's still work that needs to be done, analyzed, documented from a BA standpoint. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
It does. Awesome. Do we have any other questions or comments? Maybe you have something to add to what I've talked about, something you've heard in the past and you just want to validate with me. Anything? No? Okay. So we'll take the next 4 minutes and then we stop for the day. We'll meet again tomorrow. So where were we? Okay, so project artifact. Maybe we'll just go. Oh, okay.
I raised my hand. I wanted to just ask something.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry I missed it. Go ahead.
All right. So I just wanted to ask, are there cases whereby a BA is kind of, in a project that is kind of, plan driven, like waterfall projects, or in most cases, it's usually like, agile projects like that you have to have a BA. Right, because
Right.
most times, in those waterfall, you always hear is PM, PM, PM. Like, are there cases where a BA would be working for such organization where, like, they're still using, like, waterfall? Is that like a possibility in this day?
Well, I've never said never, right? It hasn't been my experience in like the last maybe 5 projects that I've worked on. Most people are going agile, but never say never. There could be a project where they're following waterfall methodology and they'll still have a BA. I don't think BA is to agile, like, oh, in agile they use BA, waterfall they don't use BA. No, any project can use BA, whether it's waterfall, agile, or other types, because the other types apart from waterfall and agile. And sometimes it's agile and waterfall combined, right? Yes, there may still be projects out there. See, projects that are not very big and they know all of the requirements up front, sometimes it makes sense for them to actually do waterfall. But when a project is bigger and might take longer, you don't want to leave feedback till the end of 1 year, because what if what you've been building is incorrect, right? And so a lot of companies do agile. But for like the very small one, like that small project I talked about where I took the role of the PM, it was waterfall. Okay. Did that answer your question, Vivian?
Yes. So in that situation, how did you then do all of those, those estimation where they have to do all those voting? Like, do they have to also
Yeah.
implement that, or they just scrap that and go all the way with the, like, waterfall to do their scheduling?
When you say they grab everything and do waterfall, what do you mean?
No, I'm saying like, well, during in like, for this agile, the way like they try to use all those their poker, those like when
Estimation,
their
yeah. T-shirt
estimation, yeah.
sizing, yeah.
So I'm saying now, if they were doing weather for, like, is it that but like, it's when they're doing those requirements, not really requirement, user story and all those kind of things that they kind of estimate how much time it would take to kind
Yeah.
of finish all of this. So at that point, if it was like waterfall, would they leave all of
Mhm.
that and just do their regular scheduling where you're doing those their early time and late timing and all of that, like normal
Yeah,
thing that a
so
PM would do?
yeah, so this is how I answer the question, right? I think what's important to know is, I mean, you know about estimation techniques, which I think is fantastic, right? And you know that companies who do follow agile methodology use that a lot. Again, chances are, I don't know if you're going to be on a project where you're going to do waterfall, but everybody does some type of estimation. Otherwise, we're not going to know how long this is going to take. We're just going to keep going forever, right? And we don't have forever money or forever time. So again, as much as waterfall isn't very common, it's just what I think is important to know is that your company may do follow agile methodology or waterfall. If they follow agile methodology, chances are they're going to do like t-shirt sizing, playing poker, or all these other estimation tools that you know. If it is waterfall, I mean, they still would need to know that. So what differentiates waterfall and agile is that in waterfall, you're doing a lot of the planning and estimation up front, the requirement gathering up front. You spend a long time doing all of that, and then you begin the work. Whereas with agile, you're estimating, we're gathering the requirement as we go. So even though you as a BA, it's going to take you 3 months to gather requirement. They don't wait till you're done the 3 months before they start building. When you gather the requirement for the first 2 weeks, it's validated, agreed upon, they build, and then you continue gathering. Those are the key differences, right, in waterfall and agile. It's not so much the estimation method. Do you understand what I mean, Vivian?
Yes, 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 I totally understand.
You do?
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
good,
Thank
good. Liger,
thank
before
you.
I get to you, Babskenki, I'm sorry, I think you raised your hand for a while and I missed it. Did you want to say something? Babskenke, are you there? Okay, we'll come back to him. Adebisi, go ahead, please. Oh, your hand is not raised. Layo, go ahead, please. Layo, are you there? You have your hand.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. It's just an observation, right?
Okay.
I have done BA before. I have the knowledge, but I think at this point, for the sake of the ones that don't have the experience, it might be confusing for them with, I don't know, what kind of like, because throwing them into all those estimation and all those things can be kind of like, I don't know, it's just
I agree.
an observation from my part, right?
Yeah,
so
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So maybe going forward, what we do is, and I appreciate the questions coming in. Please keep them coming. However, what would really help, just like Laia said, and I 100% agree with her, is that let us limit the questions to what we're talking about. We're going to talk about estimation because it's important for us to know it. But if you have a question about estimation, let us ask then, to give people, other people in the class who don't know, who are not familiar with these topics, to give them an opportunity to build their knowledge. Okay? So this is not to discourage anybody from asking questions, but if you can limit the question to the current content, it will serve everybody better. We will still get to your question if you ask it when we get to the topic that relates to your question. So Layo, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Okay. So I think we're going to wrap it up now. Mohammed, are you in class?
Yes, I am.
Okay, there is a class in about 13 minutes, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up here. So everybody who needs a bathroom break or get water will get water. And then we'll continue from where we stopped tomorrow. Come with your questions, come with your comments. If there's anything we talked about today you need more information on, please do not hesitate to ask me. If you don't feel comfortable talking in class, my preference would be for you to talk. Get comfortable talking with your class so when you get on the job, you'll be easier. But I would rather you still type it rather than not ask at all because you do not want to talk. Okay. Okay, Nika said, thank you, Layo. I was already feeling, Nika, I'm sorry to hear that. We're basically re-strategizing now. We don't want you confused. So I will make it a point of duty. If anybody's asking a question that isn't related to the current topic, we will defer the question. So do we all have an agreement on that? If I can get a few thumbs up, will be great. Yes?
Yes.
We agree?
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes,
Okay.
we do. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy
Thank
your next
you.
class. I'll talk to you tomorrow.